fish.
Ready? All right, now everybody understands that everybody keeps an eye out for the divers, okay?
In the Ohio River, divers and underwater cameras survey the bottom.
10 on 3/4.
At a roadside stand in Alabama, buyer and seller conduct their business on the back of a pickup truck. And at Virginia Tech, researchers seek new ways to help endangered species. The object of these activities in Ohio and Alabama and Virginia and 10 other states drained by the Ohio River system is a simple little creature that plays an extraordinary role in the nation's environment and its economy, America's freshwater mussel. Submerged in the clear and clean waters of rivers and lakes and ponds and streams around the world is a little-known but incredibly diverse group of animals known as freshwater mussels. They are mollusks, shellfish, descended from their saltwater relatives, the oysters and clams. They are simple creatures consisting primarily of a soft body within 2 hard shells. The body has gills for breathing, a digestive tract for eating, and a large muscular foot to help the mussel move. The mussel extracts minerals from the water and turns them into shell material, adding 1 thin layer at a time. The interior of the shell is made of a pearly substance called nacre. While the shells offer some protection, mussels serve as a major food source for predators such as herons, raccoons, and muskrats. And mussels offer many other benefits, as we'll learn more about later. Malacologists, or people who study shellfish, use size, shape, color, and markings to identify mussel species. While each individual species has a Latin name, most have a colorful common name as well. The pigtoe, the purple pimpleback, the pocketbook, and pistol grip, and more.
I've had the dubious honor of naming some of these, such as the shiny pigtoe, for example, and the ebony shell.
Ohio State professor David Stansberry is the curator of one of the largest collections of freshwater mussels in the world, a collection of close to 2 million specimens.
What I've always tried to do is to pick a characteristic of the shell and use that in its name, because I thought that would help the amateur and the commercial people, and the scientists may ignore it if they wish. But an ebony shell is black, and shiny pigtoe is shiny, and the whole group had the name of pigtoe to begin with. I've never really compared it with the toe of a pig, but I presume that's what it looks like.
And there are plenty of species to name, more than 1,000 worldwide. Nearly a third of those species are found in North America, and half of those in the Ohio, the Tennessee, and their tributaries. But that kind of diversity is threatened. Dozens of mussel species are on the edge of extinction. Nearly 20 are already gone. And it is the way mussels live that contributes to the way they are dying. An adult mussel leads a passive life on or partly in the bottom, the substrate of a lake or stream. And while they can use their foot to move around, most adults move no more than a few hundred yards in their lifetimes, 5 times as long as 60 years. But if they don't move very much, how did they get to be as widespread as they are? The answer is in the way they reproduce. After fertilization, embryos develop within the female for anywhere from 2 to 10 months. Then, in mid to late spring, the female releases the mature larvae, now called glochidia. The glochidia drift in the currents of the water until, if they're not eaten, they attach to a fish's gills and fins. Often, a specific type of mussel needs a specific type of fish, such as a bluegill or a bass. To attract a host fish, a female mussel sometimes will use a lure, flapping part of her body, for example, to look like potential food. It is an ingenious way to give the glochidia a chance to hitch a free ride.
They can be transported many tens or hundreds of miles, maybe even 1,000 miles or more, to a different habitat. And by this means they can expand their range, become more numerous, have a chance of surviving when part of the range gets wiped out.
Without a host fish, Glaucidia will die. So if a host fish is driven out of a river by pollution or other problems, the mussels that need that fish will eventually die off. Attached to the fish for 1 to 4 weeks, the Glaucidia mature as tiny white specks, feeding on the fish's blood. Dozens of Glaucidia may attach to a fish without killing it. Where the host fish goes, so go its Glaucidia, and that is how a species spreads. Much more mobile than any adult mussel, the host fish provides mass transit for a species' future generations. After the free ride, still very tiny, the individuals drop off the host fish, and the bottom-dwelling life of the mussel begins, first as a juvenile, then as an adult.
97.1, 74.5, 42.7.
Just below Watts Bar Dam in eastern Tennessee, Tennessee Valley Authority mussel expert Steve Alstead leads a team trying to determine the health of mussel populations there. Alstead measures and records mussels collected by divers. Watts Bar, completed in 1942, is typical of impoundments built across the country in the 30s and 40s. Its effects on mussels are typical as well.
These mussels have not reproduced since Watts Bar Dam was built. Essentially what we have is a terminal population of shells here that are just eventually dying off.
While a few thin-shelled species do seem to be reproducing below the dam, most are not. Completion of the dam changed the conditions under which these species had lived for millions of years.
In some instances, you've blocked the migration of a number of fish species that come up through the system. So essentially you're knocking out a potential fish host. But you got to consider too that before they built these dams, this section of the river was very riverine. So you had many different species of darters and minnows and shiners that occurred in the shallow water. Once you impound that water, they may not have been able to adapt themselves to those kind of conditions. Fish move out, then you've lost your reproductive capability of your native mussels.
Dams present a whole series of threats to freshwater mussels. Behind a dam, fast-flowing water slows down and silt and sediment settle out. Mussels can be smothered.
When you put a dam in a stream, the water backs up behind it. What was once a free-flowing stream, mixing freely with the atmosphere, gaining oxygen from it, releasing CO2 to it, becomes a standing pool of water. If you'll pardon the expression, a stagnant pool of water.
With slower currents, less food may reach a mussel, and less oxygen too. And turning a river into a lake can make the water more acid, making the mussels there sick and weak. Back at Watts Bar, Alstead and his team move from site to site, sampling what's left of the mussel populations.
Okay, go, Danny. All right.
The divers will search the bottom for 11 minutes, pulling up every live mussel they can find. The water is muddy, the current is swift, the work is hard. The mussels brought up are counted, measured, and recorded. Back in the 30s and 40s, of course, no one knew building a dam could so devastate mussels in the Tennessee or in other parts of the Ohio River Basin. Now we know better, and Dick Biggins, an endangered species specialist with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, understands the damage that has been done.
One of the greatest diversities of freshwater mussels is contained within the Tennessee River system. And with the building of impoundments, these species were eliminated throughout much of the Tennessee River system. So we now have what was left of this once great fauna. The only place it's left now is in the upper Tennessee River system, in the Clinch and the Powell, and a few other rivers in the Tennessee River Valley.
And maybe the Clinch most of all, away from the dams, away from the cities and people, away from most everything, the Clinch still flows freely through southwest Virginia, and its mussels survive. On a late summer afternoon, a team of scientists has come to the Clinch River at Pendleton Island, a Nature Conservancy preserve. Snorkeling in knee-deep water and combing areas where muskrats eat, the group will find 32 different species of shells in just a few hours. That's twice as many species as in all of Europe. Virginia Tech fisheries professor Dick Neves surveys the find.
It's an extremely high diversity for such a short reach of river. We only sampled about 200 meters of stream. There are several endangered species. The fine-rayed pigtoe, shiny pigtoe, birdwing pearly. We've got several federal candidate species here as well.
For Neves and the others, this harvest serves as a reminder of what the Tennessee River system once was and why so many mussel species have developed there.
The Tennessee River system in general is extremely old from a geological perspective, and therefore there was lots of time for these species to evolve and speciate. So the high diversity that we see in the Tennessee River and its tributaries relates back to the history of the river and also the geological time that has occurred and allowed speciation to occur.
The Nature Conservancy is a private organization trying to preserve threatened and endangered species. One way it does this is by buying the land where those species live. Don Gowan works in the Conservancy's Southwest Virginia office.
The Nature Conservancy purchased Pendleton Island in the mid-1980s, 1985. Pendleton Island was recognized as one of the most important mussel concentration sites in the upper Tennessee River Basin.
But buying up the island and land around it hasn't been enough. The freshwater mussels there are under siege.
We have a lot of the older age classes of mussels, the more mature mussels, are still present. You can go out and you can pick them up almost any day, any time, any place around the island. But you can't find young mussels, 1 to 5 year olds.
Trying to pinpoint an exact cause of the problem is difficult, and in fact there may be no single cause. A sewage leak, an industrial outlet pipe, things like that may contribute, but the fact of the matter is a lot of little things add up to degrade a stream, even cows. Just ask Virginia Department of Game and Inland Fisheries mussel expert Sue Brunderman.
One of the primary problems with cattle is the physical degradation of the stream banks. They're stomping. Another thing is the water quality problems associated with them standing in the stream. Things that aren't really visible unless you take water quality analyses.
A little bit of siltation is coming from this farm, a little bit from this road, a little bit from this housing development, and then it all accumulates into the river. And so what you have is a large accumulation of pollution, siltation.
As this demonstration project shows, one small patch of land can dump a big load of silt into a creek or river, and it all adds up. The silt buries the river bottom, suffocating mussels that simply cannot move out of the way. And lots of human activities add to the load. Construction and dredging in and along a river can contribute silt as well and stir up the bottom and cover mussels. Acid runoff from coal operations can poison mussel populations all along the Appalachians, as can fertilizers and pesticides that wash into rivers from farms. On a crisp and clear autumn day, U.S. Fish and Wildlife biologist Bill Tolan leads a team surveying mussel populations in the Ohio River. Using a device called a braille, Tolan's crew literally combs the bottom looking for mussels. Any open mussel touched by the braille's tips or dovetails will clamp down and hang on to be brought to the surface.
That's extremely warm.
Again and again, the braille brings up little or nothing as Tolan's boat moves up and down the Ohio in places that are supposed to be loaded with mussels.
We were going down here at Site 11, and they had 106 mussels of 9 species on their braille.
3 weeks later, Tolan is back, this time with a team of divers and an underwater camera to better survey what's going on at the bottom of the river. There is some good news, the discovery of an endangered pink mucket.
That's an old timer.
Yeah, that sure is.
Maybe 30 years old. It is for Tolan a bright spot in the day's activities.
I always thought it could be here. The habitat was here. The fish hosts are here, probably. Since this is a big river, it's a big river mussel, and it's historically found here.
But from what the divers collect and what the underwater camera shows, it's obvious to Tolan something is wrong. He sets a trap, and his suspicions are confirmed. The next day's headlines announce the arrest of more than a dozen men charged with illegally poaching mussels, stealing them from the Ohio. While some states do allow commercial mussel harvesting, it isn't allowed in this part of the Ohio. The men are prosecuted, convicted, and fined. It is, for Tolan, a small victory. The poached mussels, after all, are still gone. Human collection of freshwater mussels has a long history. Native Americans collected them for food and for trade, depositing the shells in huge middens or mounds, now found along the rivers of the Ohio Basin. As settlers from Europe moved in, they found the mussel's meat tough and tasteless, but they did find value in the mussel's shell. Button factories sprang up where mussels were plentiful, and millions upon millions of pearl buttons were manufactured from freshwater mussel shells into the 1950s. Then came plastic, and the button factories closed down. But then another use was discovered for the shells of certain mussel species, a use that has blossomed into a $50 million a year industry employing thousands of workers: cultured pearls. Cultured pearls are produced in Japan and a few other Asian countries by taking a bead or pellet cut from a freshwater mussel's shell and inserting it into a saltwater oyster. The oyster then coats the bead with a pearly substance, producing a cultured pearl. Where a natural pearl could take years to form, a cultured pearl can be produced in as little as 9 months. The coating of such pearls is extremely thin, so the interior bead has to be perfect. The shells of 3 major mussel species, the three-ridge, the maple leaf, and the washboard, provide the kind of material that makes the best cultured pearls.
A good shell is usually judged first by the quality of it. That is, when you break it, whether it's got stains or cracks, because this is bad for production, of course. And the next step is the size and thickness of it.
Lonnie Garner should know a good shell. Around him and half a dozen other men, a commercial mussel industry has grown and flourished. From an open warehouse in the northeast corner of Alabama, Garner owns and operates the U.S. Shell Company. It is the collection point for a network of more than 1,000 mussel collectors across the eastern half of the country. While some states forbid any mussel collecting, others allow it under certain regulations. Most musselers are part-timers, collecting on weekends or during summer vacation. Most of them dive, using a system called a hookah rig, usually homemade from available parts. Once turned on, the rig sends compressed air down to a diver for hours. And a diver will spend hours underwater for good reason. While prices fluctuate, a diver can earn pretty good money for a day's work. At these prices, one good-sized washboard will bring the diver $30. Garner has agents setting up shop on roadsides throughout areas of the South where musseling is legal, conducting their business on the back of a pickup truck.
17 and a half on the regular.
The shells usually come into the warehouse with the mussel still inside.
We steam them in a big vat, usually about 10,000 pounds at a time. We steam them about 30 minutes, just like a big clam bake. And we throw them through a machine that knocks the meat out of them. And of course, they just go up a belt and go in a pile, and then we, if necessary, we run them through another machine which sizes them.
From there, the shells are bagged and shipped to Japan or some other Asian country, where beads will be cut from their nacre to make cultured pearls. Despite the gathering of millions of pounds of mussel shells each year, Garner claims the industry is not a threat to any mussel species, not to any of the 3 major commercial species, nor to any species that's endangered.
The shell industry would never overharvest a population to extinction or anything like that. There's no endangered species of any value at all. And it's you might have heard me say this before, it's like when you're buying raccoon hide for $20 a piece, you don't buy no possum hides, you know. It's just that simple.
Like Lonnie Garner, James Peach deals in mussel shells, selling to Asian markets, but he sells here at home as well. At his store in Nashville, Peach specializes in natural pearls found in Tennessee River system mussels.
I think the tremendous diversity, not only in colors, but in shapes of the natural pearls makes them the most exciting pearls in the world.
Peach is a student of mussels as well as a trader of them. His Nashville store includes a museum displaying some of the variety of freshwater mussels that exist in North America. When Peach talks about the value of freshwater mussels, he doesn't just talk about their economic value.
Mussels have many different values to me. One particular value to me is personal value, because I've been around mussels all my life. I enjoy the many different species of mussels, from the pistol grip to the monkey face to the washboard shell.
Mussels have values that go far beyond their worth to the commercial mussel industry. For Steve Alstead, they serve as monitors of a river's health.
It's hard to care about something that's living in the bottom of a river or bottom of a stream, which you don't see very often, but it's sort of like the canary in the mine. It's really your first front line that you've got problems when you start seeing dead mussels or no mussels at all. They're filter feeders, they're excellent indicators of water quality. And when you start losing them, that's a sign, because we use this water to drink. A lot of people use the water. So that ought to be sending out warning signals.
They also have what I feel is aesthetic values in terms of just being there and providing more diversity for the rivers and streams where they occur. They have scientific value. They're probably the largest freshwater bivalves that we have in this country in most places, and therefore they serve for scientific study in terms of how they function and what they do in those systems. So there are multiple values that they have from a scientific aesthetic standpoint.
Indeed, mussels are even used in biomedical research. Scientists have found they're resistant to cancer, and they want to know why. People who realize all these values of freshwater mussels are realizing there's a serious new threat to their existence: the zebra mussel. How can one mussel be a threat to all the others? Zebra mussels don't need a fish host, so they reproduce much more quickly than other mussels, by the thousands. In such numbers, they eat a lot of food and take up a lot of space, starving out and crowding out native mussel species. One way they spread upstream or from one river to another is by hitchhiking, attaching to boat bottoms or getting into live wells in infested waters, then dropping off when the boat is launched somewhere else. They can move in this way hundreds of miles in a year. But efforts are being made to control the spread of the zebra mussel, efforts reflecting a new and growing movement to save all of America's pearly mussels. Extension programs across the country are teaching boaters how to look out for zebra mussel hitchhikers to protect uninfested waters. And from scientist to average citizen, more and more people are working in more and more ways to try to undo the damage that's been done to America's freshwater mussels. On a muggy May morning on the Tennessee-Virginia border, a group of river lovers gathers to celebrate the Clinch and its sister river, the Powell, both threatened refuges for a wide variety of mussels and fish and other creatures.
Anybody have any questions before we jump in and get wet?
Karen Firehawk directs the Save Our Streams program for the Isaac Walton League, a conservation group. In the next hour and a half, she will teach these students how to protect the Clinch by monitoring its ecological health.
It can be a rock rubber, a net holder, or a bug picker, or all three.
Bug picker.
Okay. Where it came from was an idea back in the early 1970s that the only way that we were going to really protect America's water quality was through people getting involved, hands-on, volunteers at the local level who lived in the creeks, finding out what was going on in their watershed and taking steps to solve the problem. And the idea of Save Our Streams, SOS, sort of is a call for help for people to get involved in saving creeks.
Farmers, too, are getting involved. Bill Cottrell of the Nature Conservancy is working with farmers to build fences upstream from Pendleton Island. The fences keep cows out of the Clinch and keep silt and animal waste away from its mussels.
The farmers have been real cooperative and real responsive to it. We're working on our fourth project right now, and they've all been real interested in it. And as soon as they find out that they have mussels in this river that are found, in some cases, nowhere else in the world, then they perk up and they're suddenly very proud of the fact that they're actually being good stewards of the river and the organisms in the river.
State agencies throughout the Ohio River Basin are also working to save mussels and the waters in which they live. State biologists are cataloging, protecting, and restoring rivers and lakes and streams one by one. And on the Ohio, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is turning a 362-mile string of islands and their surrounding waters into a national wildlife refuge to better protect the mussels and other wildlife that live there. At a farm pond in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains, Virginia Tech graduate student John Burris checks mussels he's keeping in cages, protected from predators. He's studying whether it's feasible to store mussels in such environments to protect all kinds of species from zebra mussel invasions and to breed endangered species to save them from extinction.
There are going to be some of the species that are lost simply because there is not that population there to begin with. But I think if successful here, it can be a means of possibly reestablishing those endangered species in areas where they were established and are now non-existent, as well as building up those populations in rivers where they are existent.
And scientists at Virginia Tech are trying to create fish host substitutes so mussel glaucidia can survive even when their fish host has gone away. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is distributing posters to teach students in the Ohio River Basin about the importance and diversity of the mussels that live there. And on the Tennessee River system, the Tennessee Valley Authority is looking to undo some of the damage dam building has done to freshwater mussels.
In the next few years, TVA has really launched a program at, number one, cleaning up the Tennessee River system. And they are studying ways of improving the releases of water, improving the dissolved oxygen content in the water below all their dams.
Much of this work to protect America's freshwater mussels comes under the Federal Endangered Species Act.
The purpose of the Endangered Species Act, which is an act that's administered by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, is to identify those species which are at risk of extinction, and then to develop recovery plans in order to try to bring those species back so that they're not on the verge of extinction. You know, the bald eagle was an indication of a collapse in the habitat because of DDT, and it brought a lot of public awareness, it brought a lot of change in how we use pesticides. The Endangered Species Act, by causing the notice of things like freshwater mussels and fishes, brings efforts to bear on aquatic ecosystems.
But why all this effort? Why the setting up of preserves, such as Pendleton Island? Why the posters? Why the painstaking work with microscopic glaucidia? So what if 1 or 2 or even a dozen species of freshwater mussels are lost? When we lose a species, we lose a potential cure for disease. We lose a food source for other wildlife. And we lose a lot more. As Dick Biggins reminds us, we lose a piece of the planet.
All the life in these rivers is interconnected. You begin to lose pieces of that life, and eventually the whole ecosystem will collapse. And we're a part of that ecosystem, and we need to protect all of the parts that we live in.
For a poster on saving America's pearly mussels, send $1.75 for shipping and handling to the Virginia Tech Extension Distribution Center, Lansdowne Street, Blacksburg, Virginia, 24061-0512.